It's a pleasure to be here, and I'll try and say a few words about innovation that I hope add some value. I think there is a danger in a conference like this that we can all celebrate pieces of innovative practice around the world. You know, the fantastic stuff that's going on in India, and then flip to what might be happening in Copenhagen, or what might be happening in Bilbao, what might be happening in the UK, whatever it might be, and actually just say, gee whiz. And I want to try and bring some of the strands together, and then maybe offer a few remarks about what Sam has said. Actually, Sam, I'm just halfway through a great book called The White Tiger, by Aravind Atiga, who won the, I think, Booker Prize for it a couple of years back. It paints a slightly more kind of another view of entrepreneurship in India than anyway. Do get it and look at it. It's a bottom up look at what it's like to be a chauffeur and then an entrepreneur for a rich family on the make in India, and the amount of money that has to change hands to grease palms to make things happen. I do think that it's going to be very difficult for India and China to become number one economies in the world. Both have the same aspiration. Without, and I think India's got a much better chance than China, but without actually solving the soft infrastructure issues. And in particular, kind of owning some of the things that help to produce Western industrialization, the kind of Enlightenment values, checks and balances, rule of law. India has them, but you and I both know that it's very imperfect. And I think to become number one economy in the world, with multinationals operating in many countries and with a genuine capacity to kind of innovate, requires dimensions in civil society, institution building in civil society that I think India may find elusive. That's not to say I'm not an optimist. When I'm asked about China and India, I always back India over China, because I think it has a better chance of doing that than India has a better chance of doing it than China. Why do I say what I say? Because the heart of innovation is the embrace of the new. And the embrace of the new necessarily means that you are challenging incumbents. There will be an incumbent company, an incumbent social practice, an incumbent who is the custodian of the current way of doing things, in which there are enormous vested interests. And you have to have, there's lots of dimensions to innovation. There's lots of dimensions to having an innovative mind. There's lots of dimensions to building innovative infrastructures, ecosystems, as I'm about to call it. But the precondition for it is an economy and society which embraces fluidity, understands that there will be churn, understands that there will be ongoing losers, understanding that the current incumbents have got to be challenged. And that's as true in social innovation and public innovation as it is in private sector innovation. And it's a really important thing to say, I think, because otherwise you just end up saying, well, look at these wonderful things going on, it's all win-win. Actually, on the ground, you are a challenger. You're a challenger of accepted practice. And I think I'm optimistic about India in comparison to China in this respect. I think India, I think, is more capable of encompassing change, because ultimately all things in China have to pass the litmus test of whether it will sustain one-party rule, and that's an impossible position for an innovative society to have. I also think that in this realm of social and public innovation, which we're talking about in this session, I think it's really important that that actually innovation is applied to kind of really tough issues that are out there, that it can't be if it's to kind of really make an impact, it has to tackle the hard things, not the low-lying fruit. Hard things include the fact that a third of our health budgets in the West are spent on people aging in the last 6 months of their lives. Hard things include the inability to spread best practice in our education system from the very good schools to the kind of median schools and the ill-performing schools. Hard things to crack are how do the bottom 15% in our societies approach parenting. And if social innovation isn't addressing those issues, it's not, of course, doing the job. But the minute it approaches them and it has this spirit of the embrace of the new, it's also coming hard up against the vested interests who currently are the custodians of all the practice in those hard-to-crack areas. I think there are some more things, I think, to say about innovation. I mean, I think if you are, I'm a great champion in open innovation. No one is smart enough to have all the answers themselves. You have to have an outward-looking perspective. The organisation that you operate, it could be 100 strong, like Louise's Young Foundation. It could be 100,000 strong, like a government bureaucracy. It has to have an open orientation. It has to accept that it does not possess all the answers. And that requires a mindset and value system that has to be hardwired into that organisation. And it's almost impossible for many existing organisations that have grown up over the last 50, 75 years to have that. And it is the social entrepreneurs and the social enterprises that are the ones which have a commitment to open innovation and the value system that comes with that. You can't be open without being inclusive. You can't be open without respecting dissent. You can't be open without embracing and understanding diversity. These are value systems that you have to hardwire, it seems to me, into your institution. I like to think of an ecosystem of innovation. I champion this idea in the private sector, and my big innovation centre that I founded tries to figure out how to construct all the institutions and processes that support open innovation for, inverted commas, wealth generation. I think exactly the same is true in the realm of social and public innovation. And the trick we all have to pull in societies like India, which is so enormous with its many states, its 1.2 billion people, and in European countries like the ones that constitute the European Union, even a small state like Denmark is far too complicated for you to have effective top-down innovative initiatives. Nor can you rely on, this is really important to say, some of the chatter in the bars and in the hotels is all about, all we've got to do is to democratize individual citizens on social networking sites, and that will be the means to provide innovation. That is part of the story, but in the end, I think you have to have institutions in which this takes place. I'm a great believer in the innovative institution, and I talk in terms of creating intermediate institutions between the state and the individual, intermediate social institutions, intermediate public institutions, which are small enough actually to be able to be responsive to city or town or local requirements, but big enough to be able to marshal resource and actually constitute a place around which individuals can relate to, build careers in, join, be trained, and actually acquire a culture. Because if you believe in this open-minded culture, in this diverse culture, that's held in an institution. And I think constructing this ecosystem will be the trick to pull, I'm quite certain, if India is to meet its vocation of becoming the #1 power in the world in 2060. And I'm sure when you hear the others speak, Christian and Gorka, the question I'll be asking as I hear them speak is, are they actually talking to an agenda of intermediate institutions? And what is the common DNA in the recommendations they make, if any? Because I think that, just to finish off, I think these institutions have some common characteristics. And we were discussing, before you all arrived, whether social enterprise could be profit-making. It can certainly, I think, be profit-seeking. I'm not sure it can be shareholder value maximising, because the complicated trade-offs there are in taking any social initiative. If the sole criteria becomes the maximisation of the share price or the maximisation of the surplus in the next time period, I doubt a social enterprise is going to be doing its job well. On the other hand, it has to make a surplus, it has to be profit-seeking. And I think the ownership structure of social enterprise has to be carefully thought about. Should they be owned by multiple shareholders? Should they be owned by families? Should they be owned by sole proprietors? And I think, for my own money, I think the best form of ownership has to have an element of mutuality and cooperativeness in it. And if you want to enfranchise workers, the employees in the enterprise, and if you want it to hold that crucial culture, I also think that the governance of this institution is enormously impossible. I run an Oxford college. It's run by the academics in parliaments that meet 9 times a year. And it's a form of parliamentary governance, democratic governance, which actually, when you can be very annoying, but actually tends to get it right over time. I do think that social enterprises require democratic governance with the ownership that is actually vested in either wholly or in part the workforce. And I also think it needs leadership teams that understand and own the values. If you don't have these things, I think that social enterprise is not likely to be sustainable and is going to become kind of will-o'-the-wisp. You know, it'll be here, it may last for 5, 6, 7 years and then disappear. You need institutions that endure over time if they're going to make a really serious impact on the social problems that confront not just Europe, but the less developed world. And lastly, I want to say this. There are 250,000 words in the English language. One of them is social and one of them is public. And speaking as a natural, it's my native tongue, this English, social and public do not mean the same thing. And at a conference like this, that can get lost. And it has a very, very important connotation in this context. A public enterprise is one that's responsible for all citizens and delivers to the universe of all citizens. That is the nature of publicness. And consequently, there are demands for accountability in a public enterprise that do not exist to the same degree in a social enterprise. A social enterprise is particular. It's a subset. It's a family. It's a school. It's a smaller unit than the universe that constitutes the public, and there are much less demanding criteria for accountability. Consequently, the kinds of innovative enterprise in the public sector are quite hard to do, because over and above the things that I've described, enduring innovative answers to some of our public problems require that the deliverers may be profit-seeking, but they also have to be accountable to all citizens, because otherwise they're not discharging their public vocation. So I think this is difficult territory, very difficult territory, very important territory. We know that the state, the top-down state, is not responsive. We know that it's captured by producer groups. We know that some of the people who are custodians of the current way of doing things are backed by the state, and consequently, that truth has to be confronted, and some of them are public sector trade unions in health and education, and that's also problematic, because if you believe in publicness and you believe in employee voice, you'll also believe in unions, and then you discover that they're defenders of the status quo rather than partners in changing it, and that's also highly problematic. So what I want to say to this conference is that I'm passionate about this agenda, passionate about it in the private sector. I've got quite a long way in thinking through what the ecosystem should be to support wealth generation and innovation in the private sector. In the public sector, I just wanted to flag up that there aren't really single, easy, magic bullets. That when you hear us speak in the next hour, and please be thinking about, could this constitute an ecosystem? How could practice in Spain or in Denmark be reproduced in your own countries? What would be a structure of intermediate institutions that would work? How would you get the current vested interest to change? How would you confront that political problem? What kinds of ownership structure would you go for? What kinds of leadership structure would you go for? And how would you ensure that customers and users have voice in the enterprise? Hard questions, and ones that demand to be asked and answered in a convention like this. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Will. Full disclosure here, I find all this stuff very exciting. I think about it all a lot. And I think quite often we think about this in a very, we ask each other these questions within a kind of social innovation audience. It's like the social innovation club, and often we don't tend to talk to other people outside. So I think it's really important at this conference, which is more broadly on innovation, that we're having this discussion with you. And so I'm really excited about when we open it up. Will threw up so much stuff there, from ecosystems to can social innovations make profits to values. There's so much for us to talk about. But before we move on to our two other speakers, I wonder whether Sam wanted to just comment on any of the things that Will brought up, particularly in the Indian context.
I have lots of things to say.
Great. Please go ahead.
First of all, we recognize the challenge. We know we have a lot to learn. But let me tell you, my generation or Mr. Hutton generation doesn't quite understand what needs to be done. It is really up to the 20-year-old kid. All we can do is give them freedom, information, infrastructure. They will innovate. Our generation, to some extent, I would take myself, in India, has probably messed it up. It is the next generation that's going to really get it done. When I see young kids in their 20s in India, it is amazing. Because they are at a low level. And for them, the only way to go is to go up. I tell my own children that I went to US with $40. I had to go up. For them, they are the children of a rich man. It's tough to think the way I thought. So it's the hunger, desire to really excel in the young, which is going to make a difference. So our theories are not going to work. If you and I think it is right or wrong, I don't think it matters. Just give it to them, they will get it done. Trust them, love them, use technology like ICT. And I am high on India, not because I have the answers. I am high on India only because of young talent. Unbelievable kids. Poorest of the poor. We were looking for the best hacker in India. And we found one boy, 15-year-old, whose father is a peon. He has not even gone through finishing high school. And that kid is the best hacker in the country. How do you justify this? It's just that kind of raw talent that you have all over. When you have a billion people, you are bound to have 10 million smart ones. There is nothing you can do. It is just sheer statistics. So when I talk about India being a bigger economy, it's not about superpower. It's just about sheer numbers. If you have 1.2 billion people, and if they each earn $6,000, $7,000, you are bound to be a bigger economy. It is not about superpower or control, or those days are over. It's about equity. I think for long enough, 250 million in US, 250 million in Europe dominated the world. It's about time to recognize that there are others who have same ambitions, and they will also rise. So let them rise. It's okay to have some level of parity. You cannot have poverty. I was with Simon Perez a few months ago. He said, Sam, the problem in the Arab world is basically poverty. If you reduce disparity, a lot of tension will go away. I think this disparity has to be reduced all over the world. What it means is let other people rise for a while. I think that's a message people don't like to hear. It's a way of life. Accept it and move on.
Thank you. We can pick up on a lot of those points later. For now, though, just on something you just said, and something that I think Christian's going to speak a little bit more about is people and the use of citizens. And something that we haven't talked about is a big theme in social innovation. A lot of the work we do and a lot of the organisations we talk to every day is about how we use everybody, how we use all of society. And how we therefore create much better solutions, much more efficiently and quickly. Some of the words that we use quite a lot in social innovation are in, with and for, rather than to and at. Working with people, working within communities, rather than to people and at people. So I think Christian's going to build on this a little bit more. Christian Bason is the head of Mind Lab, which is a cross-ministerial innovation unit in Denmark, and also author of my current favourite book, Leading Public Sector Innovation. May I recommend anyone who hasn't read it to go and read it immediately. Christian, please come and talk to us. Thank you.